by the Department of Homeland Security that requires the renewal of applications for a certain category of individuals to occur before October 5th. Garufas seemed concerned that the deadline could kick some out of the program if they weren't able to meet it. They pay taxes, they pay rent, they pay for mortgages, they support communities, the judge said of the individuals involved. He added that he was concerned with the government proceeding with arbitrary deadlines. My hope would be, frankly, that the executive branch would put a voluntary halt to this, the termination process, to permit Congress and the president to find a legislative solution so the courts are not involved, he said. Trump's own statements would belie any effort to throw these people out without good cause, and it would just seem to be arbitrary, Garufas said. Deputy Assistant Attorney General Brett A. Shumate responded that the administration was actively considering whether to extend the deadline in light of Hurricanes Harvey and Irma, but that didn't seem to satisfy the judge. I think we would just not focus on people in the impacted areas from the hurricanes. We need to focus on everybody, he said. If the October 5th deadline is not extended, the judge might entertain a request for a temporary restraining order from the challengers. But critically, if the deadline is extended, it could infuriate not only Trump's base, but several states who have insisted the program come to a quick end. The parties are set to revisit the issue next week. Meanwhile, the president is on notice. The judge has his eyes on Twitter. So people are looking at this from various perspectives. They are actively pursuing the avenues that they have available to them to try to do something about it. As we are here. We're also trying to help. We're trying to raise money for the DACA folks who can reapply, to make sure that their fees are covered, or that their legal fees are covered in terms of getting help, filling out paperwork and whatnot. We just had an information event this last weekend on Saturday, just a couple days ago, to help people fill out that paperwork who are going to reapply. So we're doing what we can. And the point, I guess, that people need to understand is that DACA recipients are not the only worthy immigrants that need help. They are just an easily identifiable interest group from amongst the general immigrant population that have a compelling story that they all sort of share in common. Most immigrants have very personal individual stories. And so you can hear any number of different stories. Many are quite compelling, but the fact that they are all so specific to the people involved. Oh, I came here because I had family here. I came here because I was running from violence. I came here because we were poor and we needed opportunity, and on and on and on. There's so many different possible stories. It's hard to tell kind of a unified story that can get people engaged and say, okay, look, these people, who are these people? Who am I waving my hand at? Well, it's immigrants. Well, what is their story? Well, they all have different stories, but they generally range from blah, blah, blah to blah, blah, blah. And, before you know it, if you're being honest about it, you've just confused people. It's like, well, they had a bunch of different reasons to be here. All I can think of is that we have laws, and and people just sort of push back on it and don't hear it because it's too difficult to sort of take in and be sympathetic for, or to understand all these different complex and interconnected reasons why people may have come here in a way that led to their ending up in a situation where they are not documented and are therefore considered illegal by some people. But the DACA young people differ in that they all have one common theme to their story. They were all brought here as children or as young people. I mean, it's hard for some people to hear that, say, a 15-year-old is a child. They go, oh, no, I'm almost grown up. Well, you may think you're almost grown up, but to those of us who are a lot older, we kind of lump you together. If you're a early teen on back, you're kind of considered a child by most people's standards, and that's the theme that unites all the people who are on DACA, is that they were all brought here as children. They didn't play a role in coming here. They were brought here by their families. They came here with their families. They came here at a time in their lives when they could not make that kind of decision for themselves, that it was being made for them. Someone was saying, here's where we're going to go, and they went. So that consistent theme makes for an easy story to tell. It's not their fault that they are here without documentation. They did not create that situation. They were not a party to it. It was thrust upon them. Many didn't even know that they were undocumented till they reached their 16th birthday and then wanted to get a driver's license or, start work or something like that, and then were told by their parents, oh, by the way, you're not a citizen. You can't do that. So it's because of that common theme in their stories, which are still as individual as anybody's, but because they share that one factor, it's easy to identify them and to sympathize with them and to feel, okay, well, these people are worthy because of their situation. They are worthy of our help. And yet, even with all of that going for them, there are still individuals out there who are like, nah, send them away, get rid of them. I had a guest on here just a couple weeks ago who spoke a little bit about her own personal story, how she came here at 1 year old and has lived here ever since, never left the country. I've seen a picture of myself at 1 year old. I don't remember. I vaguely remember it was like a birthday photo or something. I vaguely remember that event. I have no conscious recollection of where I lived, how I lived. I could have lived in, Antarctica at the time and then come here. I wouldn't know it. So anything that happened before 1 year old, my only recollections would be just vague, misty thoughts of, impressions of family life, of rooms, of, high chairs, of whatever, you want to think that you associate with being a baby. They have nothing to do with my country, what part of the world I lived in or anything like that. I have no knowledge of any of that. My world was my little house, my little room, being in the car, something like that. I mean, they were very small spaces that I had an understanding of and a sense of them, So really, this person who came here at 1 year old and me who was born here, there is no difference between us in terms of what country is our home. What place is our home? It's America. We grew up here. This is the land of our birth insofar as we understand it or are conscious of it. And to send somebody like that away to a country that she's never been to is just ridiculous and pointless and serves no purpose except to make some, larger point about how we don't want, we being Americans, a nationalistic point about how we don't want people from other places coming here. We don't want you because you're not one of us. We reject you because of that. It's that kind of foolish, aggressive, and frankly, racist or prejudiced or bigoted or something. I mean, there are plenty of terms that could apply to this kind of thinking and that kind of attitude that I think mostly fit. But whichever one you want to choose, none of them are good. None of them are positive attributes that are worthy of emulation. So I don't know. It really makes very little sense. But at least these people have a story. And I guess the larger point that I was trying to make in bringing this up is that there are as many other stories that are equally compelling but more personal that could be told about virtually all the immigrants. Not all of them. I'm sure there are some people who came here for selfish reasons, who had bad intentions. There are always somebody like that some members of any group are going to be like that. But the overwhelming majority of immigrants that I have known, that I have interacted with, have compelling stories for why they came here, what they were searching for or trying to get away from, and why they were thrust into a position where they're now at odds with the legal system. And I wish that there were time or some way to tell each one of those stories and to just go through and say, okay, here's the 11 million undocumented people, roughly. It's just a figure thrown out there. Let's go through each case one by one and say, all right, what is your story? And hear it and talk everybody into going, well, see, that's a good reason why this person ended up here in this situation. Let's let them stay, But you can't do that. And that's part of the problem. And that's one reason why dreamers, as they're known, have such a powerful force behind them, because any thinking, caring person is going to be sympathetic to their situation and say, okay, well, that's not their fault that they're in this situation. There's no reason for them to be in this situation other than, legal red tape. Let's resolve this for them so that they can go on with their lives and everything will be fine. That's what any reasonable, caring individual would think. The only people that feel differently are people with sort of an anti-immigrant axe to grind. And frankly, I don't think we need to be listening to them. I don't know. I don't feel... It's often said that, well, we should listen to everybody and we should take everybody's point of view into account. But if your motivations are not good, if you don't have the best interests of everyone at heart, that form the foundation of what you're trying to do, then I don't think your opinion really counts for very much. I'm sorry, I just don't. And if you raise like racist or bigoted or just, I don't know, paranoid nationalistic arguments, and that's your reasoning behind why you think something should be a certain way, then we can go, oh, well, okay, I understand why you're saying that, but we don't operate that way. That is not how we as a country, as a people, want to live. We don't want to be like that. And I think most people, if you ask them, and if you really dig down into what motivates them, would say that, no, I reject those motivations for, making laws or excluding people or harming people. And yet somehow we continue to do it. Anyway, okay, so I'm going to move on here because I've just kind of gone over and over that point. But Here's something going on. I'm just kind of curious about this. This is from Forbes, so I'm not sure what it is, but it says the RAISE Act is a DACA poison pill. So let's find out what this is all about. So in the odd world of anti-immigration politics, where success seems measured by how many people are denied the opportunity to live in America, those who advocate including the RAISE Act in any bill that provides legal status to DACA recipients hope for a Super Bowl-sized victory. On September 5th, 2017, citing legal concerns, the Trump administration announced it would end DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, established to prevent the deportation of individuals who came to America as minors, 16 or younger. Without congressional action, approximately 800,000 young people with DACA could be deported to countries they barely know. After meeting with Senator Chuck Schumer and Representative Nancy Pelosi, both Democrats, it appeared Donald Trump had struck a deal to provide lawful permanent residence to Dreamers, as DACA recipients are often called, in exchange for more border security. Since then, some loud voices who want to deport the Dreamers have argued Republicans should include in any DACA relief bill measures that fundamentally change and dramatically reduce legal immigration to the United States. By design, including the RAISE Act, S. 354, would be a poison pill that would kill any chances of passing legislation on DACA. It is a dreadful, economically harmful piece of legislation. The National Immigration Forum and National Foundation for American Policy recently released a study that analyzes point systems and the revised RAISE Act. Among the findings, 1. The most immediate impact of the RAISE Act would be to eliminate the applications of more than 4 million people currently waiting in immigration backlogs. Wiping out pending applications for family and employment-based immigrants is hypocritical for those who claim the rule of law banner. The bill has only 2 sponsors, and one of them, Senator Tom Cotton, argued as recently as 2013 that providing legal status to those who entered the U.S. illegally was unfair to the many foreigners patiently obeying our laws and waiting overseas to immigrate legally. 2. The study found cutting legal immigration in half, as proposed in the RAISE Act, would reduce the rate of economic growth in the U.S. by an estimated 12.5% from its projected level, according to Joel Prockin, Senior Managing Director and co-founder of Macroeconomic Advisors. That's because immigrants are such an important part of labor force growth, which is a key ingredient of economic growth. The RAISE Act would not increase high-skilled immigration, but instead would eliminate the ability of U.S. employers to choose which employees to sponsor. Instead, the bill would impose a type of central planning for the U.S. labor supply by establishing ill-conceived criteria in a point system that research has shown in theory would deny entry to 98% of Americans and even many Nobel Prize winners. Number 3, there is literally no evidence that eliminating family immigration categories will raise the wages of U.S. workers, as Senator Cotton has asserted. Number 4, there were a record 6.2 million job openings in July, as reported by USA Today, citing recent Labor Department data. Employers that need workers across the skills spectrum, whether in high-tech, healthcare, dairy, or construction, would be irreparably harmed by the RAISE Act, as would American families who could not reunite with close family members. Children 21 years old, one of the categories the RAISE Act eliminates, of course, are not distant relatives, as immigration critics assert. Startup business activity, a key engine of growth in the U.S. economy, would slow without immigrant workers and entrepreneurs. Finally, the RAISE Act misrepresents the nature of Canadian and Australian immigration systems, which operate under parliamentary systems and broad legal authorities incompatible with the U.S. system of government that divides power between executive and legislative branches. The bill's goal is to significantly reduce immigration, whereas the purpose of Canadian and Australian immigration policies is to attract immigrants, explains the report. Some argue that it would be unfair to allow dreamers to gain permanent residence and then sponsor for immigration the parents who brought them into the United States illegally. Only U.S. citizens can sponsor parents, and mothers and fathers who entered illegally are not qualified to adjust to permanent residence. That means relatively few parents would be eligible to immigrate, and, in any case, under current bills in Congress, it would be about a decade or more before any dreamers could even apply for citizenship, and the few eligible sponsored parents likely not until the year 2033 or later, notes attorney Greg Siskin. Still, even if this were a legitimate concern, it certainly would not be necessary to pass a law prohibiting all American citizens for perhaps the next 100 years from being allowed to sponsor a mother or father for immigration, and it would not justify eliminating the ability of U.S. companies to sponsor individual employees or American citizens from sponsoring their adult children or siblings, particularly those already waiting years in immigration backlogs. In the end, Donald Trump can save the lives in America of hundreds of thousands of young people, or he can please those who, it appears, measure success by how many people are denied an opportunity to live the American dream. He can't do both. Oh, so yeah, the RAISE Act, I forgot all about that. That's a lovely, lovely piece of legislation. Proposed to basically cut in half legal immigration of all sorts and severely restrict who could be allowed in here and who couldn't. So you're seeing a lot of just ridiculous statements being made. So, for example, here, this is from PolitiFact, entitled, Ken Paxton Makes Unfounded Claim That Barack Obama Used DACA to Unilaterally Confer Citizenship. So the lead lawyer for Texas state government, this is the lead lawyer for the Texas state government, hailed President Donald Trump's rescission of predecessor Barack Obama's move affording young unauthorized immigrants, something sometimes called dreamers, renewable shields from deportation. Moreover, Attorney General Ken Paxton charged in a September 5th, 2017 press release that Obama used the lawful presence dispensation to unilaterally confer U.S. citizenship. Well, you, dear listener, and me, dear host, both know that that's ridiculous. And also, the Attorney General and the lead lawyer for the Texas state government also know that it is completely false. But they said it anyway because they are trying to make a political point or score a political point or confuse people that aren't paying attention. Anyway, to continue with our story. In his release, Paxton said the program that Trump gave Congress 6 months to restore granted lawful presence and work permits to nearly 1 million unlawfully present aliens. The Pew Research Center recently estimated that fewer immigrants, nearly 790,000 people with roots mostly in Mexico, have received work permits and deportation relief through the Obama-launched Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. Yet citizenship wasn't a declared offering via DACA. The June 2012 Homeland Security memo announcing the program said, quote, "This memorandum confers no substantive right, immigration status, or pathway to citizenship. Only the Congress, acting through its legislative authority, can confer these rights," end quote. So what citizenship provision was Paxton talking about? By email, Kaylee Lovorn, a spokeswoman for the Attorney General's office, replied that DACA wasn't intended to be a path to citizenship. But, she wrote, figures released by U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services indicate that 39,514 DACA recipients have been approved for lawful permanent resident status, green cards, her email implying that such individuals could later seek citizenship. A web search led us to September 1st, 2017 press release from Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, publicizing the USCIS figures. Grassley's release said preliminary data indicates that the Obama administration allowed thousands of DACA recipients to exploit an immigration law loophole to obtain green cards. The data also show that more than 1,000 DACA recipients have already obtained citizenship. As of August 21st, 2017, Grassley's release said 45,447 DACA recipients have been approved for advanced parole, with 3,993 applicants getting applications denied. This approval, the release says, allows a DACA recipient to travel out of the country and legally return, making them eligible to adjust their immigration status and receive a green card. Well, we'll delve into advanced parole, but first, more numbers from Grassley's release. 59,778 DACA recipients have applied for green cards, with 39,514 approved. Also, the release said, 2,181 of the green card recipients have applied for U.S. citizenship, with 1,056 becoming citizens, which would break out to 0.1% of DACA recipients becoming citizens by our calculation. We spotted no elaboration in the release and didn't draw any from Grassley's AIDS or Homeland Security, demonstrating that any of the tallied individuals obtained citizenship by virtue of being a DACA recipient. On the other hand, legal experts supportive of DACA told us the advanced parole aspect of the program may have helped individuals attain legal residency and citizenship. In each instance, the experts stressed a person getting citizenship would first need to have been sponsored by an immediate family member, most commonly a spouse, who was already a legal permanent resident or citizen, which would have been required regardless of applicants' DACA participation. Natalie Druckelman, an attorney for Austin-based American Gateways, which serves refugees and other immigrants, said by phone, the fact that individuals are eligible to apply for green cards if they have a qualifying relative, somebody who can apply for them, is old news. Druckelman and others stressed that attaining citizenship for any immigrant is a multi-step process. Only some DACA recipients will be eligible for green cards, and the path from green card to citizenship is long and requires meeting certain obligations, including payment of federal income taxes, at least 3 years of continued legal permanent residency, and passing the required civics and history exam. There is no direct route to citizenship uniquely available to DACA holders. So, in other words, what these guys were doing was, I don't have time to read the rest of this story, but they were basically twisting the facts in order to make it sound like something was happening because they wanted to impress certain listeners with their point of view and frighten them into thinking that this is something that should be fought and something that should go away, when in fact it is something that should be supported and it is something we do support. So anyway, I basically, I don't know, maybe that's not the right word, but it's the only one that comes to mind. I have generally, basically, more or less, in reality, run out of time. So you have been listening to CU Immigration here on WRFU-LP, Urbana, 104.5 FM. I appreciate you tuning in. I hope that you're doing well wherever you are, and that we will see you again next week. In the meantime, have a great week.